Suicide. Voluntarily taking your own life. You feel the world is too much, or perhaps you believe life is not worth living anymore. Either way, I think most people believe that it's selfish to take your own life. But why is that? First, you're not just taking your own life, but leaving the pain you felt to others. It's escaping, an easy way out. After leaving this realm, the ones left behind might blame themselves, which is painful. A part of the one who didn't take their own life dies too, the part of them you made. The inside jokes, the stories, the way their tone shifted when talking to them. All gone. That's why it's painful. So, what does this have to do with the title of the video? Why drug abuse is selfish? Well, I feel these two ideas are very correlated. In my opinion, I believe that doing drugs is a type of suicide. Not necessarily in the literal sense, but it can definitely lead to it. The main idea is that you're taking an easy way out, so you can leave the pain behind. The problem is, just like with suicide, it leaves the pain onto others. But how so? When you drink to forget your past life, perhaps you had a bad childhood, the people you interact with now have to deal with the consequences of your actions. You may lash out in anger on alcohol. You may lose motivation to get stuff done on marijuana. You become aggressive while on cocaine. I could go on. There's always a side effect with most illicit drugs. You most likely didn't mean it, but in the end, it's about how you affected the people around you. Even in the extreme case where they have absolutely no one that cares about them, they're being selfish towards themselves. They're robbing themselves of psychological and physiological prosperity. Once you destroy your mind or body, it becomes exponentially harder to come back. Of course, I really empathize with people who escape by using drugs. I've heard people with unimaginable pasts that make me feel awful just hearing, and I don't necessarily blame them for the route they took. Sometimes the pain is too much and you give in. But drugs only make it worse, not better. They may relieve the tension you feel in the moment, but when it wears off, it often feels worse. You end up having to take more drugs to keep off the pain, but it's not that simple. The human body, for a lot of popular illicit substances, built up a tolerance and you need even more to stay high, furthering your mental and physical decline. Experiencing this as a loved one from the outside is also a horrendous experience. While it may not be in as deep as a hole as them, it still hurts a lot. You watch as the person you once knew slowly, or abruptly, fades away. The parts of them you love secede into the ocean of their mind and often gets replaced with something less desirable. They may have loved hanging out with you, but after feeling the highest highs and the lowest lows, you simply are too boring now. You can't keep up with what they desire, and now you're left in the dust wondering if they'll ever come back. I've personally experienced this with longtime friends. It began in my childhood. I grew strong bonds with friends I met in elementary school. Every day we'd play tag, freeze tag, dodgeball, or kickball. It was one of the funnest parts of my life. Pure enjoyment. Nobody on their phones addicted to Instagram, and, of course, no one was dealing drugs with us back then. However, from middle school to high school, things changed. My friends began being entrapped in the culture of doing drugs is cool. For some reason, seeing people hit vapes, carts, or drinking was the epitome of being cool. Honestly, looking back, I think some of it really was just peer pressure / trying to be popular. Nobody wanted to be the guy that refused to do anything because he thought drugs were bad. For that, you'd be considered a loser. I experienced my friends' personalities change. Their priorities shifted from being fun-oriented to drug-oriented. It had gotten so bad that in order to hang out, there needed to be alcohol or other substances. Otherwise, it'd be too boring and everyone would want to just go home. Their grades dropped. In fact, a lot of them initially dropped out of high school. They felt it wasn't worth the effort and they weren't going to use the knowledge in the real world. So, in my last year of high school, I had gone from hanging out with around 10 to 12 people during lunch to maybe 1 to 2. It absolutely sucked and it felt like I had been robbed. I'm not completely pinning that experience to drugs, as there were obviously a lot of other factors at play, but they definitely made a huge contribution in affecting their personalities and goals. I believe that doing drugs, mostly alcohol, cocaine, non-medicinal use of marijuana, or more chaotic drugs, is something that you should never dip your toes into. Although, it's very hard. Alcohol makes this especially hard as a large portion of people who use it to socialize. That's a huge reason bars exist. Alcohol is also legal, so there's no problem getting it in your hands as long as you're above a certain age. However, I'm not saying alcohol should be illegal, as we've seen what happens with that, but there definitely should be a shift in perspective on our culture as a whole, which is already kind of happening. Are drugs like alcohol or cigarettes, in general, beneficial to society as a whole? Do they actually solve the problem that a lot of people use it for? In my opinion, no. You use it to socialize? Try pushing yourself out of your social comfort zone instead of being awkward and actually put effort into having fun. People largely rely on external sources to have fun, but rarely put it on themselves to do it. This is a problem because you're relying on things outside of your control to enjoy life. Become the captain of your happiness, not a mere bystander or observer to your own enjoyment. Use them to avoid certain emotions you feel? Let me ask you, when the drugs wear off, do you still feel those emotions? Are they worse? My guess is likely yes to both. In addition, it also saves you money. You don't need to rely on unnecessary substances to achieve your life goals. But, in conclusion, I think drugs are only a hindrance to people's lives. In a way, when you become a drug addict, you are performing a type of self-suicide. You damage the people around you for your own self-gain. I wholeheartedly believe that's selfish. I hope you enjoyed, and peace out.